The crystal chandelier caught the light just right as Leonard raised his glass, that smug grin plastered across his face like he owned the world. And maybe he thought he did. The whole restaurant had gone quiet, waiting for his birthday toast, when I reached into my purse and pulled out the brown envelope. His eyes met mine. That grin faltered. I didn't say a word, just slid it across the white tablecloth, past the champagne flutes and the imported roses he'd insisted on ordering. The envelope made a soft scraping sound that somehow felt louder than all the whispered conversations around us. "What's this?" Leonard's voice had that edge to it, the one he used when things weren't going according to a script. I leaned back in my chair, crossed my legs, and finally spoke. "Open it." His fingers trembled as he lifted the flap. I watched his face go from confused to pale to something I'd never seen before. Fear. Real, actual fear. The first page was divorce papers. His eyes scanned them quickly, probably looking for a way out, some loophole his expensive lawyers could exploit. But then he got to the second page. The offshore accounts. The transfers. The property deeds with another woman's name on them. Clarissa. His voice cracked on my name. Around us, people had stopped pretending not to watch. Forks hung in midair. Conversations died. Even the pianist in the corner seemed to play softer, like the whole room was holding its breath. "You think you're so clever," I said, my voice steady as stone. "Calling me a gold digger at parties. Telling your friends I married you for your money. Making jokes about my retirement from ambition. Would you have walked away too? Tell me in the comments if silence can be stronger than shouting." Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. Leonard's business partner, Marcus, stood up from a nearby table. "Leonard, what's going on?" But Leonard couldn't answer. He was staring at the documents like they were written in a language he'd never learned. His hand reached for his water glass and missed. The glass tipped, spilling across the papers, but the ink didn't run. I'd made sure to use the good printer. "You can't do this," he whispered. "I already did." That's when I saw her. Vera, the marketing consultant. The woman from the text messages. She was standing by the bar, her face frozen in shock, a martini clutched in her perfectly manicured hand. Our eyes met for just a second, and I smiled. Not a big smile. Just enough to let her know that I knew everything. Leonard followed my gaze, and his face went even paler, if that was possible. The math was finally adding up in his head. All those late nights he thought I was crying into my pillow, I'd been with my lawyer. All those times he thought my silence meant defeat, I'd been building my case. I stood up, smoothing down my black dress. The one he'd said made me look too severe. Good. I wanted to look severe. I wanted to look like exactly what I was in that moment, a woman who'd had enough. "Happy birthday, Leonard." The crowd gasped. Someone's phone was definitely recording. Tomorrow, this would be all over social media, but I didn't care. Let them see. Let everyone see what happens when you underestimate the quiet ones. I picked up my purse, turned toward the exit, and that's when I heard it. His voice, barely above a whisper, but somehow cutting through all the noise and shock and chaos. "You'll regret this, Clarissa." I stopped. Didn't turn around. Just let those words hang in the air like smoke. Then I walked out, my heels clicking against the marble floor, each step taking me further from the man who tried to make me small, and closer to the woman I'd forgotten I could be. Behind me, I heard the crash of his chair hitting the floor. Someone shouted for a manager. Vera's martini glass shattered, but I kept walking. Because some envelopes don't just contain papers. Sometimes they contain the truth. And the truth, when it finally comes out, doesn't whisper. It roars. The first time I saw Leonard, he was laughing at something the bartender said, and that laugh filled the whole room like sunlight breaking through clouds. I was 42, divorced for 3 years, finally comfortable being alone. Finally okay with quiet Saturday nights and books that didn't judge me for highlighting the sad parts. Then he turned around. "You look like someone who appreciates good wine," he said, gesturing to the empty stool beside him. I should have walked away. Should have finished my drink and gone home to my predictable, peaceful life. But there was something about the way he looked at me, like I was the only person in that crowded bar, like I mattered. I appreciate honesty more, I replied. His smile widened. Then we're going to get along just fine. 3 months later, we were engaged. Simple dinner at a small Italian place, nothing fancy. He held my hand across the table and said the words every woman who's been hurt wants to hear. I'm not like the others. I see you, Clarissa. The real you. I believed him. God, I believed him so completely. The ring was modest. He said he wanted to save money for our future, for the life we'd build together. I loved that about him. No flash, no show, just us. Have you ever ignored a small red flag because you wanted to believe in love? But there was this moment during dessert. We were talking about his ex-wife, and he got this look on his face, hard and cold, like winter settling in. I've never met a woman who wasn't after something, he said, stabbing at his tiramisu. I laughed it off. Told him he just hadn't met the right woman yet. Told him I wasn't after anything except partnership, except love that didn't come with conditions. He squeezed my hand, and the coldness melted away. You're different, he said. I can tell. The wedding was beautiful. Small ceremony, close friends, his business associates filling half the church. My sister whispered in my ear before I walked down the aisle. You sure about this one? I was sure. Or I thought I was. Those first few months were everything I dreamed of. Leonard came home early, brought flowers for no reason, kissed me like I was precious. We'd stay up late talking about retirement plans, about growing old together, about the garden I wanted to plant in the backyard. Whatever makes you happy, he'd say, pulling me close. Your happiness is my happiness. I planted roses. Pink ones because they reminded me of hope. 6 months in, he started working later. Business expansion, he said. New clients, bigger deals, more responsibility. I understood. I'd been married before. I knew how careers worked. But then came the first joke. We were at his company dinner, surrounded by men in expensive suits and women with practiced smiles. Someone asked what I did, and before I could answer, Leonard jumped in. Clarissa's retired from the workforce, he said, and everyone chuckled politely. Lucky her, right? My throat tightened, but I smiled. It was just a joke. People made jokes. Then he added, his voice just loud enough for the table to hear. She's living the dream. Married a man who takes care of everything. The women at the table gave me looks I couldn't quite read. Pity? Judgment? Both. I excused myself to the bathroom and stared at my reflection. The same face, but something in my eyes looked dimmer. When I came back, Leonard was deep in conversation, had already forgotten I'd left. I sat down quietly, finishing my wine, feeling suddenly invisible in a room full of people. That night, driving home, I tried to bring it up. That comment at dinner? I started. What comment? He didn't even glance at me, focused on the road. About me being retired. It felt. Jesus, Clarissa, it was a joke. Don't be so sensitive. I went quiet. Watched the streetlights blur past. Told myself I was overreacting. But that sentence he'd said during our engagement kept playing in my head like a broken record. I've never met a woman who wasn't after something. 3 years into our marriage, I'd learn exactly what he meant by that. 3 years later, that throwaway comment would become a weapon he'd use to cut me down in front of everyone we knew. 3 years later, I'd remember this moment and realize the red flags weren't small at all. They were just painted the same color as love. The house started feeling bigger somehow, like the walls were stretching away from each other, creating spaces that couldn't be filled. Leonard's late nights became late nights plural. Then they became the normal. The keys in the lock at 11 midnight, sometimes 1 in the morning. Always the same excuse. Client dinners, emergency meetings, deals that couldn't wait until Monday. I'd wait up at first. Have his dinner warming in the oven, wine poured, trying to be understanding, trying to be the wife who didn't nag or complain. You didn't have to wait up, he'd say, loosening his tie, without looking at me. I wanted to. Well, don't. I'm tired, Clarissa. The garden became my refuge. Those pink roses I'd planted had grown wild and beautiful, sprawling across the trellis like they were reaching for something better. I'd spend hours out there, dirt under my fingernails, sun on my face, trying to grow something that would stay. If someone embarrassed you in public, would you stay quiet or speak up? The phone call started around month 4 of his distance. He'd step out of rooms mid-conversation, lock his office door, keep his cell face down on every surface like it was hiding state secrets. Who was that? Asked once, casual, stirring pasta sauce. Work, he said. Always work. I told myself it was stress. His company was expanding. Money was tight. Men handled pressure differently than women. All the things we tell ourselves when we don't want to see what's right in front of us. Then came the jokes about money. Careful with the credit card, honey, he'd say, watching me unload groceries. People might think you married me for my wallet. I'd force a laugh. Good thing we know better. But his eyes never laughed along. They'd just watch me, calculating something I couldn't quite figure out. The dinner party happened on a Thursday. His business partner Marcus was hosting, celebrating some merger I didn't understand and hadn't asked about. Leonard insisted I wear the blue dress, the one that showed too much shoulder, made me feel exposed. You need to look the part, he said, adjusting his cufflinks in our bedroom mirror. What part? The part of a woman who has everything. The party was loud, crowded, full of people who smiled with their mouths but not their eyes. I nursed a glass of wine, made small talk with wives who seemed just as lost as I felt. Then Leonard's voice cut through the noise. Where's my beautiful wife? He was standing by the fireplace, slightly drunk, surrounded by laughing men. Clarissa, come here. I walked over, something in my stomach twisting. He put his arm around me, heavy and possessive. Gentlemen, let me tell you about marriage. You find yourself a woman who's retired from ambition, and suddenly life gets a lot easier. The men laughed. Someone slapped Leonard on the back. I felt every face in that room turn toward me, felt the weight of their judgment, their assumptions, their pity. Marcus's wife touched my arm gently. He's had too much to drink. But I knew better. Drunk words were sober thoughts. This was what he really believed. That I'd given up, checked out, become some kept woman living off his success. I smiled. I actually smiled, because what else could I do? Making a scene would only prove him right, would only make me look like the emotional, irrational woman he was painting me to be. Excuse me, I whispered, and walked to the bathroom on legs that felt borrowed. The mirror showed someone I barely recognized. Same face, same hair, but the light behind my eyes had gone out somewhere along the way. When had that happened? When had I become this hollow version of myself? I pressed my palms against the cool marble counter and breathed. When I finally came out, the party had moved on. Leonard was deep in conversation about stocks or bonds or whatever men talked about when they wanted to feel important. We drove home in silence. He hummed along to the radio like nothing had happened, like he hadn't just humiliated me in front of 50 people. At home, I waited for the apology. Waited for him to realize what he'd done, to say he was sorry, to be the man I'd married. Instead, he kicked off his shoes and headed for the stairs. Leonard. He turned, annoyed. What? What you said tonight. Oh, come on. You knew what you were signing up for when you married me. The words hit like a slap. Clean, sharp, deliberately cruel. What does that mean? It means, he said slowly, like I was stupid, that I take care of you. You live in this house, drive that car, wear those clothes. So maybe don't get upset when I make a harmless joke. He went upstairs. I heard the bedroom door close, heard the shower start, heard my marriage dying one drip at a time. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to Leonard snore, feeling like a stranger in my own life. At 3 a.m, I got up to get water. Leonard's phone was on the kitchen counter, face up for once, and it buzzed with a new message. The screen lit up. She'll never suspect a thing. Love emoji, V. My hand froze on the glass. Water overflowed into the sink. I looked at that message for a long time, memorizing every word, every letter, that little heart emoji that said everything I needed to know. Then I turned off the phone, put it exactly where I'd found it, and went back to bed. But I didn't sleep. I planned. The bathroom mirror at Marcus's house had shown me one version of myself. The bathroom mirror at home showed me another. This one was cracked. Not broken, just cracked down the middle, splitting my reflection into two separate women. Which one was real? I'd laughed at that dinner party. Actually laughed, while Leonard's words sliced through me like paper cuts, small and sharp and burning. The sound that came out of my mouth was bright and hollow, a performance for an audience that didn't care. She's retired from ambition. Everyone had turned to look. Some smiled sympathetically. Others avoided my eyes altogether. Embarrassed for me, but not enough to say anything. Not enough to stand up and say that's wrong. That's cruel. That's not how you talk about someone you love. What would you do if you discovered a message like that? Because love was supposed to protect you. Love was supposed to be the safe place you ran to when the world got mean. But what happens when love becomes the meanest place of all? I'd stayed at that party another hour. Smiled through dessert. Made small talk about nothing. Pretended my husband hadn't just reduced our entire marriage to a punchline. The wives gave me pitying looks. The men avoided me. Leonard held court by the fireplace like some king who just delivered the wittiest observation ever made. In the car ride home, I'd practiced the conversation in my head. That hurt me tonight. I need you to respect me. We need to talk about how you speak to me in public. All reasonable requests. All things a partner should be able to hear and understand and apologize for. But when we got home, when I finally found the courage to speak, Leonard had looked at me like I was insane. You knew what you were signing up for when you married me. Those words echoed in the bathroom now, bouncing off the cracked mirror, multiplying until they were all I could hear. I splashed cold water on my face. My mascara had run, black rivers down my cheeks, and I looked like what I felt. Broken. Used up. Thrown away. I believed him when he said I was different. When he said he saw the real me. When he promised that our love would be built on trust and honesty and partnership. But standing there at 3 a.m, staring at my fractured reflection, I realized something. He did see the real me. He saw someone he could control. Someone he could diminish. Someone who'd stay quiet while he rewrote our story to make himself the hero and me the burden. I dried my face and walked back to the bedroom. Leonard was snoring, peaceful as a baby, completely unbothered by the damage he'd done. His phone sat on the nightstand, charging, innocent-looking. But phones are never innocent. I picked it up. My hands weren't shaking. That surprised me. I thought they'd shake. Thought I'd feel guilty or scared or something. But I felt nothing. Just cold determination, like ice forming over a lake. The passcode was easy. His birthday. He'd never changed it, too arrogant to think anyone would ever look. Messages. Recent. There. Dinner was amazing. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Love emoji V. Your wife looked miserable tonight. Does she suspect? She'll never suspect a thing. Love emoji V. I scrolled up. Weeks of messages. Months maybe. Plans for dinners. Complaints about me. Jokes at my expense. Little heart emojis scattered like landmines. One message made my blood stop. Once the paperwork goes through, we can finally be together. She won't get a dime. Trust me. I put the phone back exactly where I'd found it. Leonard shifted in his sleep, mumbled something incomprehensible, then settled back into his snoring. I lay down beside him, stared at the ceiling, listened to him breathe, and something inside me clicked into place. All this time, I'd been playing by rules he'd never followed. Being understanding when he worked late. Being patient when he forgot our anniversary. Being quiet when he humiliated me in public. Being the good wife while he planned to take everything and leave me with nothing. The next morning, I woke up before him. Made coffee. Scrambled eggs. Set the table like I did every Saturday morning. Leonard came down in his robe, yawning, reaching for his phone. Morning, I said, sliding a plate in front of him. Morning. He scrolled through his messages, completely unaware that I'd read every single one. How'd you sleep? Fine. You?
Great, elite.
He ate his eggs, drank his coffee, read something on his phone that made him smirk. I've got a meeting this afternoon, he said, not looking up. Might be late. With who? His eyes flicked to mine. Client. What's their name? Since when do you care about my clients? I shrugged. Just curious. He studied me for a moment, then dismissed whatever suspicion he'd felt. Don't wait up. I won't. After he left, I sat in the quiet house and made a list. Bank statements, property deeds, tax returns, insurance policies. Every document that proved what we owned together, what he'd hidden, what he'd promised me versus what he'd planned to take. I had work to do, and for the first time in years, I felt something that wasn't sadness or confusion or shame. I felt powerful, because Leonard thought my silence meant surrender. But silence can also mean strategy. And while he'd been busy planning my ending, I'd just started writing my own. The house was mine for the next 6 hours. Leonard wouldn't be back until dinner, maybe later if his meeting went according to plan. I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee going cold and his laptop open in front of me. Same password, same birthday, same arrogance. Would you stay quiet while planning your justice? The files were all there, organized in folders labeled with names I didn't recognize. Investments, properties, accounts, years of financial decisions I'd never been included in, never asked about, never told mattered. I started with the obvious ones. Our joint checking account, which I knew about. Our savings account, which I'd helped build. The retirement fund we'd started together when we still said we and meant it. But then I found the others. An offshore account in the Cayman Islands. Another in Switzerland. Property deeds for a condo in Miami I'd never seen. Stock portfolios under holding companies with addresses that didn't exist. And there, buried in a folder marked personal, was a document that made my hands finally shake. Prenuptial agreement.
Draft.
Dated 3 weeks before our wedding. I opened it. Read every word. Every clause that stripped me of rights I'd never known I'd given up. Every paragraph that protected his assets while leaving me with nothing if the marriage ended. Except I'd never signed this. We'd never had a prenup. I would have remembered that conversation, would have insisted on a lawyer, would have at least read the damn thing. This was his insurance policy. The one he'd planned to spring on me but never did. Maybe because he realized it wasn't legal. Maybe because he'd found a better way to control me. Through humiliation. Through isolation. Through making me so small I wouldn't think to fight back when he finally decided to leave. My phone was in my hand before I'd consciously decided to pick it up. I took pictures. Every document. Every account number. Every property deed with another woman's name on it. Veronica Hastings.
V.
His marketing consultant. The woman from the text messages. The woman who'd been at the dinner party, watching me with something that looked like victory in her eyes. I'd thought it was just an affair. Messy and painful, but survivable. But this was bigger. This was calculated. This was him systematically removing me from my own life, while making sure I'd be too broken to fight back. I uploaded the photos to a secure cloud account Leonard didn't know I had. Then I cleared my phone's recent activity and put it back in my purse. The laptop went back exactly where I'd found it. I made myself lunch. Salad with grilled chicken, just like always. Ate it slowly, methodically, while my mind raced through possibilities. Divorce lawyer.
Yes.
But not just any divorce lawyer. I needed someone who specialized in hidden assets, who understood offshore accounts and shell corporations, and all the ways rich men hid money from their wives. I needed someone who played to win. That afternoon, I drove to the city. Told Leonard I was shopping meeting a friend, the usual lies married people tell to carve out privacy. He barely looked up from his phone when I left. The lawyer's office was on the 42nd floor of a building that smelled like money and power. Glass walls. Modern art. A receptionist who looked like she'd never smiled in her life. I need to see Jennifer Walsh, I said. Do you have an appointment?
No.
But I have evidence of financial fraud, and I'm willing to pay her full rate. The receptionist's expression changed. One moment. Jennifer Walsh was 50-something, sharp-eyed, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my car. She looked at me like she could see straight through to my bones. "Tell me everything," she said.
So I did.
2 hours later, I walked out of that office with a plan. A real plan. Not just hopes and dreams and wishes that Leonard would change. An actual strategy for dismantling everything he'd built on lies. "Most of these accounts have your name on them," Jennifer had said, spreading the documents across her desk. "Joint assets. Joint properties. He put you on them years ago, probably for tax purposes. Which means you have just as much right to them as he does." He said I'd get nothing. Men like him always say that. They count on you believing it. She looked at me hard. "Do you believe it?" "Not anymore."
Good.
"Because we're going to take him apart piece by piece, and we're going to do it so quietly he won't know what's happening until it's already done." Driving home, I felt different. Lighter. Like I'd been carrying weight I didn't know I had, and someone had finally helped me set it down. Leonard was already home when I got there, tie loosened, shoes off, watching television like he owned the couch and everything around it. "Where were you?" he asked, not really caring. "Shopping." "Buy anything?" "Not yet," I said. Still looking for the right thing. That night at dinner, he was actually pleasant. Told me about his day, asked about mine, poured wine like we were a normal couple who still talked to each other. "I got you something," he said, sliding a small box across the table. Inside was a bracelet. Silver, delicate, probably expensive.
Gilt jewelry.
The kind men buy when they're doing something wrong and hoping you won't notice. "It's beautiful," I said, letting him clasp it around my wrist. "To my favorite investment," he joked, kissing my cheek. I smiled, thanked him, wore the bracelet for the rest of the evening. But later that night, after he'd fallen asleep, I took it off and put it in my jewelry box next to all the other apologies he'd bought instead of earned. Then I opened my laptop and signed the papers Jennifer had prepared. Papers that transferred our joint assets into accounts Leonard couldn't touch. Papers that protected everything I'd helped build while he'd been busy planning my destruction. Papers that turned his own strategy against him. I signed my name carefully. Clarissa Monroe. Not Clarissa Hart. Monroe. My name. The one I'd had before him. The one I'd given up because I thought marriage meant becoming someone new. But maybe marriage should have meant becoming more yourself, not less. I scanned the documents and sent them to Jennifer. Then I closed the laptop and went to bed beside the man who thought he'd already won. Tomorrow, he'd wake up and everything would look the same. His house.
His wife.
His perfect life. But underneath, the foundation was already cracking. And I was the earthquake he never saw coming. The documents came back approved on a Tuesday morning while Leonard was in the shower singing off-key to some song from the 80s. I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee and Jennifer's email pulled up on my phone, reading the same sentence over and over until it felt real. "Asset transfers complete. Everything is now legally protected under your sole name." My name. Clarissa Monroe. Not his wife. Not his investment. Not his anything.
Just me.
Leonard came downstairs smelling like expensive cologne, already scrolling through his phone before his feet hit the bottom step. The distance between us had become so normal I barely noticed it anymore. Or maybe I'd just stopped caring. "Coffee ready?" he asked, not looking up. "On the counter." He poured himself a cup, added cream, still reading whatever message had his attention. Probably her. Probably Veronica, making plans for their future that didn't include me. Except their future had just gotten a lot more complicated, and neither of them knew it yet. "I've got meetings all day," Leonard said, grabbing his briefcase. "Don't wait up." "I never do anymore." He paused at that, finally looking at me with something that might have been curiosity or suspicion. But then his phone buzzed, and whatever thought he'd had disappeared. "See you tonight." The door closed behind him. I waited until his car pulled out of the driveway. Counted to 60. Then I opened my laptop and looked at everything I now controlled. The house we were sitting in. Deed in my name only. The vacation property in Colorado he'd bought as an investment.
Meaning?
The stocks, the bonds, the retirement accounts he'd set up with both our names for tax purposes, and then forgot I had equal access to. All legally, completely, undeniably mine. Comment, silence, wins if you believe quiet planning is the best revenge. Jennifer had been thorough. Every asset that had my name attached, every property we'd purchased together, every account he'd opened thinking I'd never be smart enough to understand. She'd transferred them, protected them, made sure that when this house of cards finally fell, I'd be standing on solid ground. He made one critical mistake. Jennifer had told me during our last meeting. He underestimated you.
She was right.
Leonard had spent years making me feel small, incompetent, dependent. He'd treated me like a decoration, something pretty to hang on his arm at parties before making jokes at my expense. But decorations don't read financial statements. Decorations don't hire lawyers who specialize in asset protection. Decorations don't spend weeks quietly, methodically, taking back what's theirs. That afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in years. I called my sister. Clarissa? Rebecca sounded shocked to hear from me. We'd drifted after the wedding. Or rather, Leonard had made sure we drifted. Too busy for family dinners. Too tired for phone calls. Too wrapped up in his world to maintain mine. Hey, Becca. Is everything okay? You sound different. I'm leaving him. Silence. Then, thank God. I've been waiting 3 years to hear you say that. We talked for an hour. She didn't say I told you, so, even though she could have. She just listened while I explained everything. The humiliation, the affairs, the hidden accounts, the way he'd systematically tried to erase me from my own life. What do you need? She asked. Nothing. I've got it handled. That's my sister. I could hear the smile in her voice. The woman who doesn't need saving because she saves herself. After we hung up, I sat in the quiet house and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not happiness exactly. Not yet. But possibility. The sense that my life could be something other than this endless performance of contentment. Leonard came home late that night, reeking of perfume that wasn't mine. He didn't even bother making excuses anymore. Just headed straight for the shower, washing away evidence he thought I was too stupid or too beaten down to notice. I was in bed when he came out, reading a book I wasn't really reading, just holding to have something to do with my hands. Good day? I asked because that's what wives ask. Exhausting, he said, climbing into bed beside me. But productive. That's good. He reached over and squeezed my shoulder. The bracelet he'd given me caught the lamplight. I'd put it back on this morning, playing the role he'd written for me one last time. You know I appreciate you, right? He said, and for a second he almost sounded sincere. I know I don't say it enough, but you make my life easier, Clarissa. Easier. Not better. Not fuller. Not more meaningful. Easier. Like I was a convenience. A service. A thing he'd purchased and could use however he wanted. I appreciate you too, I lied. He kissed my forehead and rolled over. Within minutes, he was snoring. I lay there in the dark, listening to the sound of his breathing, thinking about the envelope I'd asked Jennifer to prepare. Divorce papers. Evidence of his offshore accounts. Proof of his affair. Everything I'd need to end this marriage on my terms, not his. The plan was simple. His birthday was in 2 weeks. Big celebration at his favorite restaurant. All his business partners and friends, and the woman he thought he'd end up with once he discarded me. I'd give him his gift in front of everyone. Let them all see what kind of man they'd been celebrating. Let Veronica see what she was really getting. Let Leonard feel what I'd felt every time he made me small. That night, I transferred the last of our joint savings into my protected account. Not all of it. Just enough to make sure I'd be okay when this was over. Enough to start fresh somewhere that didn't smell like his cologne and broken promises. My phone buzzed. Message from Jennifer. Final papers ready. Just say when. I typed back. His birthday. I'll let you know the exact time. The next morning, I woke up before Leonard and made breakfast. Pancakes, his favorite. Extra butter. Extra syrup. I was humming when he came downstairs, and he looked at me like I'd grown a second head. You're in a good mood, he said suspiciously. It's a beautiful day. If you say so. He ate his pancakes quickly, one eye on his phone. I've been thinking, he said, and something in his tone made my stomach tighten. My birthday's coming up. Big dinner. I want you there, obviously. Obviously. And I want you to wear something nice. The red dress, maybe. I need you to look the part. The part. Always the part. Never just me, just Clarissa, just his wife. Always performing, always pretending, always playing whatever role he'd decided I should play. I'll wear whatever you want, I said sweetly. He smiled, satisfied, and went back to his phone. But I wasn't planning to wear the red dress. I was planning to wear black. Because some occasions call for celebration and others call for funerals. And Leonard's birthday was going to be both. The restaurant was packed. Crystal chandeliers throwing light across white tablecloths, waiters moving like synchronized dancers, and Leonard at the center of it all, holding court like some king who'd forgotten his kingdom was built on lies. I sat beside him in the black dress he hadn't wanted me to wear, the one he'd said made me look severe.
Good. Tonight, severe was exactly what I needed to be.
Isn't this perfect? Leonard said, squeezing my hand a little too tight. His smile was wide, genuine, the smile of a man who thought he'd gotten away with everything. Around us, his business partners laughed at jokes that weren't funny. Their wives smiled politely, probably wondering why I looked so calm when everyone knew about Veronica. Because they did know. I could see it in their eyes, the way they avoided looking at me directly, the way conversations stopped when I walked past. They knew, and they'd chosen a side, because that's what people do when they're afraid of becoming the next joke. But tonight, the joke was on them. Marcus raised his glass from across the table. To Leonard. 55 years young, and still crushing it. Everyone cheered. Leonard beamed. Veronica was 3 tables away, introduced as his marketing consultant, wearing a dress that cost more than my car and a smile that said she'd already won. She caught my eye once, and I smiled back, sweet and empty, watching confusion flicker across her face. Would you have waited until his birthday to strike back? The appetizers came. Oysters, caviar, things Leonard ordered to prove he could. I pushed food around my plate, watching him perform, watching everyone buy into the performance. Speech, someone called out. Leonard stood, wobbling slightly. He'd been drinking since we arrived, liquid confidence making him bolder, meaner, more himself. Thank you all for coming, he started, and the room went quiet. 55 years. Half a century plus 5. And I've learned so much. People nodded, hanging on his words like they were wisdom instead of whiskey talking. I've learned that success isn't given, it's taken. That you can't trust anyone who hasn't earned it. His eyes swept the room, landing on me for just a second. And I've learned that love isn't free. A few uncomfortable laughs. Someone coughed. My beautiful wife here, he said, gesturing to me with his champagne glass. She taught me that lesson. Didn't you, darling? My heart was hammering, but my face stayed calm. Everyone was watching now, waiting for the punchline. She taught me that everything has a price. Even companionship. Even the illusion of partnership. He smiled, cruel and cold. To my wife, who taught me love isn't free. The room erupted in awkward applause. A few people laughed, trying to play it off as a joke even though we all knew it wasn't. Veronica was smiling openly now, not even pretending to hide it. And that's when I reached into my purse. The brown envelope felt heavy in my hands. Heavier than paper should feel. Heavy with truth, with evidence, with the end of everything Leonard thought he'd built. I stood up. The room got quieter. Since we're giving gifts, I said, my voice carrying across the restaurant, I have something for you too. Leonard's smile faltered. Clarissa. I placed the envelope on the table between us, right next to his half-eaten steak and overpriced wine. Open it.
Not now.
We're celebrating. Open it, Leonard. Something in my tone made him stop. Made everyone stop. The entire restaurant seemed to hold its breath, sensing the shift, knowing something was about to break. His hands shook as he picked up the envelope. Tried to laugh it off. What is this, divorce papers? Yes. The word landed like a bomb. Silence exploded around us. He opened the envelope. His face went from confused to pale to something I'd never seen before. Pure, undiluted fear. Clarissa, what is this? Page 1 is the divorce papers. Page 2 is documentation of your offshore accounts. Page 3 is your text messages with Veronica. Page 4 is the properties you bought in her name using our joint funds. Page 5. Stop. His voice cracked. Just stop. But I couldn't stop. Wouldn't stop. This moment was 3 years in the making, 3 years of humiliation and silence, and playing the role he'd written for me. Page 5 is the transfer documents showing that every asset with my name on it is now solely under my control. The house, the Colorado property, the retirement accounts, all of it. Marcus stood up. Leonard, what is she talking about? Leonard couldn't answer. He was staring at the papers like they were written in a language he'd never learned, his brain trying to catch up to what was happening. Veronica was frozen at her table, champagne glass halfway to her lips. You called me a gold digger, I said, my voice steady as stone. Made jokes about me marrying you for your money. Told everyone I was retired from ambition. Someone's fork clattered against their plate. But here's the truth, Leonard. I didn't marry you for your money. I married you because I thought you were a good man. I leaned closer, making sure he heard every word. I was wrong. He tried to stand, but his legs wouldn't work. His hand reached for his water glass and missed, knocking it over. Water spread across the divorce papers, but the ink didn't run. I'd made sure to use the good printer. You can't do this, he whispered. I already did. The room was silent except for the soft sound of a waiter dropping a tray in the kitchen. Everyone was staring, phones probably recording, witnessing the collapse of Leonard's perfectly constructed lies. I picked up my purse and stood. Smoothed down my black dress. Happy birthday, Leonard. Then I turned and walked toward the exit, my heels clicking against marble, each step taking me further from the man who'd tried to make me nothing. Behind me, chaos erupted. Voices raising. Veronica's champagne glass shattering. Someone calling for a manager. But I kept walking, because I'd said everything I needed to say. And the rest was his problem now. At the door, I paused and looked back one last time. Leonard was still sitting there, papers scattered around him like broken promises, his face pale and lost. Our eyes met across the crowded restaurant. And then I heard it. His voice, barely above a whisper, but somehow cutting through all the noise. You'll regret this, Clarissa? I smiled, pushed open the door, and walked into the rest of my life. The voicemail came 3 hours after I left the restaurant. Leonard's voice, slurred and desperate, begging me to come home, to talk, to understand that it was all a misunderstanding. I deleted it without listening to the end. The second voicemail came an hour later. This one was angry. Threats about lawyers, about how I'd stolen from him, about how he'd make sure I ended up with nothing. I saved that one. Jennifer might need it. Have you ever walked away from someone who thought they'd never lose you? By morning, my phone was flooded. Messages from people I barely knew, asking if I was okay, if the rumors were true, if Leonard had really been hiding money. His business partners suddenly remembered my number. His friends suddenly cared about my well-being. I turned my phone off and made coffee in the quiet house that was now legally, completely, undeniably mine. The news broke on Tuesday. IRS investigation into Leonard Hart and his business practices. Anonymous tip about offshore accounts and tax evasion. Fraud allegations spanning years. I didn't make the tip. Didn't need to. Turns out when you hide money from your wife, you're usually hiding it from the government too. And the government doesn't appreciate being lied to. Jennifer called that afternoon. Have you seen the news? I've seen it. He's finished, Clarissa. His business partners are distancing themselves. The board is calling for his resignation. Everything he built is falling apart. I should have felt happy, vindicated, triumphant. Instead, I just felt tired. What about Veronica? I asked. Jennifer laughed, sharp and cold. She disappeared the morning after your little presentation. Cleaned out their love nest, blocked his number, vanished. Guess she wasn't in it for love after all. Guess not. He's been trying to reach you. I know. Are you going to talk to him?
I thought about that.
About all the conversations we should have had, but didn't. All the times I'd tried to explain how his words hurt, and he'd told me I was too sensitive. All the years I'd spent trying to be enough for a man who'd never wanted a partner, just an audience. No, I said. I don't think I am. The official notice came on Thursday. Leonard's company had folded. Bankruptcy proceedings were starting. His assets were being seized to pay back taxes and legal fees. The assets that were truly his, anyway. Everything with my name on it was protected. Jennifer had made sure of that. The house, the properties, the accounts. All mine, all legal, all beyond his reach. Marcus called me Friday afternoon. I almost didn't answer. Clarissa, he said, and he sounded old, tired, defeated. I owe you an apology. You do. We all knew. About Veronica. About how he treated you. We laughed at his jokes. We went along with it. We pretended it was fine because it was easier than standing up to him. Yeah, you did. Silence on the line. Then, he's asking for help. Says you destroyed him. I laughed at that.
Couldn't help it.
I didn't destroy Leonard. He destroyed himself. I just stopped protecting him from the consequences. He's saying you stole from him. Let him say whatever he wants. The courts will see the truth. For what it's worth, Marcus said quietly, you deserved better. We all knew that too. After he hung up, I stood at the kitchen window, looking out at the garden. The roses had gone wild, climbing over the trellis, reaching toward the sun like they'd been waiting for permission to grow. That night, the doorbell rang. I knew who it was before I opened it. Leonard stood on my porch looking like a man who'd aged 10 years in a week. His suit was wrinkled, his hair uncombed, his eyes red and desperate. Can I come in? He asked.
No.
Clarissa, please. We need to talk. We don't need to do anything. Not anymore. You took everything. His voice broke. The house, the accounts, the business. You destroyed me.
No, Leonard.
You destroyed yourself. I just stopped cleaning up your messes. I loved you. The words hung between us like smoke, insubstantial and choking. No, I said quietly. You loved what I did for you. You loved having someone to control, someone to diminish, someone to make yourself feel bigger by making them feel small. That's not love. That's not even close. So this is it? You just walk away? This is it. He tried to say something else, but I closed the door, locked it, walked back to my quiet kitchen and poured myself wine while he stood outside pleading, apologizing, making promises he'd already broken 1,000 times before. Eventually he left. Eventually they all leave when they realize you're not coming back. The official divorce decree came 6 weeks later.
No contest.
No fight. Leonard didn't have the money for lawyers anymore, and he definitely didn't have the moral ground to stand on. I signed the papers sitting at my kitchen table, surrounded by silence that felt like victory. That evening, I got a call from an unknown number. Mrs. Hart. It's Monroe, actually. Clarissa Monroe. Ms. Monroe, this is Detective Williams with the Fraud Division. We'd like to ask you some questions about your ex-husband's financial dealings. Of course. Whatever you need. Turns out Leonard's problems were bigger than I'd known. The offshore accounts were just the start. Embezzlement.
Wire fraud.
Securities violations. Years of crimes I'd been living alongside without seeing. Did you know about any of this? The detective asked.
No.
But I suspected something was wrong. That's why I protected myself. Smart woman. I had a good teacher, I said, thinking of Jennifer. She taught me that silence isn't weakness. Sometimes it's strategy. After the detective hung up, I sat in my garden watching the sunset paint the sky orange and pink and gold. The roses were in full bloom, fragrant and wild, exactly what I'd hoped they'd become. My phone buzzed. One last message from Leonard. She destroyed me.
I didn't respond.
Because I hadn't destroyed him. I just stopped pretending his destruction wasn't his own fault. The house sold faster than I expected. Young couple, First baby on the way, excited about the garden and the view and all the potential they saw in what I was leaving behind. It's perfect, the wife said, running her hand along the kitchen counter where I'd made 1,000 dinners for a man who'd barely noticed. We can raise our family here. I smiled and signed the papers and took their check, feeling nothing except relief that someone would love this place the way I'd once hoped to. The money went into an account Leonard couldn't touch. Would never touch. Because the universe had a sense of humor, and watching him beg for pennies while I had more than enough felt like poetry. Sometimes karma doesn't knock, it walks right in. Do you believe in quiet justice? His trial started in November. I didn't attend. Didn't need to see him in handcuffs or hear his lawyer try to blame me for his crimes. Jennifer gave me updates, telling me about witnesses and evidence and how the prosecution had built a case that could put him away for years. He keeps asking about you, she said during one of our calls. What about me? If you're happy. If you've moved on. If you feel guilty. And what do you tell him? Nothing. He's not my client. You are. The verdict came back guilty on 14 counts. Fraud, tax evasion, embezzlement. The judge gave him 8 years. Eligible for parole in 5 if he behaved himself. I heard the news through Rebecca, who'd heard it from Marcus's wife, who'd been in the courtroom when the sentence came down. Leonard cried. Rebecca told me. Actual tears. Begged the judge for mercy. Did he get any? Not really. Judge said he'd show no mercy to the people he stole from, so why should the court show mercy to him? I hung up the phone and looked around my new apartment. Small, overlooking the ocean, filled with furniture I'd picked out myself. Nothing from the old house, nothing that carried memories of Leonard or who I'd tried to be for him. Just me and the sound of waves and a future that finally felt like mine.
Through Jennifer, I heard that Veronica had resurfaced. New city, new name, new man with money. She'd moved on before Leonard's trial even started, proving what we all knew. She'd never loved him, just loved what he could give her. Until he couldn't give her anything anymore. Marcus lost his business too. Turns out being Leonard's partner meant being implicated in Leonard's crimes. His wife divorced him. His kids stopped calling. The last I heard, he was working retail somewhere in Ohio, trying to rebuild a life from nothing. The other business partners scattered like roaches when the lights came on. Some moved abroad. Some changed careers. All of them pretended they'd never known Leonard Hart, never laughed at his jokes, never watched him humiliate me, and done nothing. But I remembered. Would always remember. The house in Colorado sold next. Mountain view, skiing access, everything Leonard had promised we'd enjoy together but never did because he was always too busy with work or Veronica or whatever excuse felt convenient. The new owners were thrilled. I was free. One afternoon, about 6 months after the trial, I got a letter. Prison envelope, Leonard's handwriting, my new address he must have gotten from somewhere. I held it for a long time, debating whether to open it or throw it away unread. Finally, curiosity won. Dear Clarissa, it started. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know I destroyed everything good we had. But I need you to know that I'm sorry. Truly, deeply sorry for how I treated you. You were right about everything. I was cruel. I was selfish. I took your kindness and used it against you. I don't expect you to write back. I don't expect anything from you anymore. I just wanted you to know that I understand now. You didn't destroy me. I destroyed myself. And losing you was the biggest mistake of my life. I hope you're happy. I hope you found the peace I couldn't give you. Love, Leonard. I read it 3 times. Looking for the manipulation, the guilt trip, the angle he was playing. But there wasn't one. It was just a broken man admitting what I'd known all along. I took the letter outside to my balcony. The ocean was rough that day, waves crashing against rocks, wind whipping my hair around my face. I held the letter up and let the wind take it. Watched it tumble and spin and disappear into the spray. Some apologies come too late. Some damage can't be undone. Some bridges aren't meant to be rebuilt. Later that week, Rebecca came to visit. We drank wine on my balcony and talked about nothing important, and it felt good. Normal. Like I was finally a person again instead of just Leonard's wife or Leonard's victim. You know what I love about this place? Rebecca said, looking out at the water. It doesn't have any memories. It's just yours. That's exactly why I picked it. Are you happy?
I thought about that.
About happiness and what it meant. About whether I'd ever really been happy with Leonard or just pretended to be, because that's what wives do. I'm peaceful, I finally said. And maybe that's better than happy. Maybe peace is what you find when you stop trying to fix broken things and start building new ones. Rebecca squeezed my hand. I'm proud of you. For what? For saving yourself. For not waiting for someone else to rescue you. For being quiet when everyone expected you to scream, and for screaming when everyone expected you to be quiet. That night, alone in my apartment, I looked at myself in the mirror. Same face, same hair, but different eyes. These eyes had seen what love looked like when it went wrong. Had watched a marriage dissolve because one person cared and the other only pretended to. These eyes had cried and planned and fought and won. These eyes belonged to Clarissa Monroe. Not Clarissa Hart. Monroe. The woman I'd been before Leonard. The woman I'd somehow managed to find again. And she was stronger than I remembered. My phone buzzed. Message from Jennifer. Final settlement check cleared. You're officially done with all of it. I typed back. Thank you. For everything. You did the hard part. I just filed the paperwork. But that wasn't true. Jennifer had given me tools when I had nothing but proof. Had believed me when I felt unbelievable. Had turned my silence into strategy and my pain into power. Before bed, I whispered to myself the words I'd wanted to say to Leonard, but never had the chance. No, Leonard. You didn't destroy me. The ocean answered with crashing waves. You destroyed yourself. The cottage smelled like salt air and coffee and new beginnings. I'd been here 4 months now, long enough for the neighbors to stop being strangers, long enough for the mailman to know my name, long enough for this place to feel like home instead of just an escape. Every morning, I walked on the beach. Bare feet in cold sand, waves chasing me up the shore, seagulls screaming their morning songs. The rhythm of it had become my meditation. One foot in front of the other, moving forward, leaving footprints that the tide would wash away. No trace of where I'd been, just evidence of where I was going. The roses I'd planted in the garden were thriving. Different ones from the house, but the same idea. Something beautiful growing from dirt, reaching toward sun, blooming despite everything trying to hold them back. I'd started painting again. Something I hadn't done since college, back when I thought I'd be an artist instead of a wife. The canvases leaned against every wall of my cottage. Ocean scenes mostly. Waves and storms and sunsets that bled orange into pink into purple. Jennifer called one afternoon while I was working on a particularly difficult piece. Trying to capture the exact color of water at dusk, that moment when day surrenders to night. How's retirement? She asked. I laughed. I'm not retired. I'm just living. Same thing at this point. You earned it. Any news? Leonard's up for parole hearing next month. Probably won't get it. His behavior hasn't been model enough. I didn't ask about Leonard. I know, but I thought you should know anyway. Just in case. After we hung up, I stood at my window watching the ocean shift from blue to gray to silver. Thought about Leonard in his cell, counting days, probably still not understanding what he'd done wrong or why his charm hadn't saved him. Some people never learn, never change, never grow beyond who they've always been. And that was okay. That was his story to live with, not mine. The art show invitation came by email. Local gallery, open call for submissions, theme was transformation. I almost deleted it. Almost talked myself out of applying, because that's what scared people do. They say no before anyone else can reject them. But I wasn't that person anymore. I submitted 3 paintings. Ocean at dawn, ocean at dusk, ocean during a storm. The gallery owner called 2 days later, voice excited, asking if I had more work, if I'd be interested in a feature wall, if I'd come to the opening reception. Yes, I said to all of it. Yes. The opening was packed. People crowding around paintings, sipping wine, talking about technique and emotion and meaning. My work hung on the feature wall, spotlit and labeled with my name. Clarissa Monroe. Artist. Not wife. Not victim. Not anything related to Leonard, or who I'd been when I was his.
Just me.
A woman approached as I stood pretending to look at someone else's work, trying not to seem too invested in my own. "These ocean paintings," she said, pointing to mine. "They're extraordinary. Like the artist understands that water isn't just pretty. It's powerful." "Thank you." "You painted them?" "I did. The storm one especially. You can feel the rage in it, but also the beauty. Like the storm isn't destructive, it's cleansing." That's exactly what I was trying to show. She smiled. "Well, you succeeded. I'd like to buy it if it's for sale." I sold 3 paintings that night. To strangers who saw something in my work worth owning. Who wanted to take pieces of my transformation home with them. Driving back to my cottage, windows down, salt air whipping through the car, I felt something I hadn't felt in years.
Pride.
Real, genuine, uncomplicated pride in something I'd created. At home, there was a letter waiting. Prison envelope, Leonard's handwriting, my cottage address he'd somehow found again. I held it for a moment, debating. Then I walked to the fireplace and tossed it in without opening it. Watched the paper curl and blacken and disappear into ash. Some conversations were over.
Some doors needed to stay closed.
The months passed. Autumn to winter to spring. My paintings got better. The gallery asked for more. Collectors started calling. I wasn't famous, would probably never be famous, but I was making art that mattered to me and apparently to other people too. That was enough. One morning in late spring, I walked to my mailbox and found another letter. No return address this time, but I recognized the handwriting immediately. Leonard. I should have thrown it away. Should have burned it like the others. But something made me open it, maybe curiosity, maybe closure, maybe just wanting to see if he'd changed. Inside was a single sentence. "She'll never suspect a thing. Love emoji, V." The text message. The one that had started everything. The one he'd kept on his phone like evidence of his own arrogance. On the back, in his handwriting. "You suspected everything. I'm sorry I made you feel like you had to." That was it.
No signature.
No plea for forgiveness. Just acknowledgement that he'd underestimated me and paid the price. I folded the paper carefully and put it in a drawer with all the other documents from that life. The divorce decree. The asset transfers. The trial verdict. The whole story of how I'd saved myself. Then I closed the drawer and went back to my painting. That afternoon, I took my coffee out to the porch and watched the waves roll in. Consistent, eternal, washing everything clean. My phone buzzed. Rebecca, asking if I wanted to come to dinner next week, meet her new boyfriend, start being part of family again. "Yes," I typed back. I'd love that. Because life wasn't just about walking away from bad things. It was about walking toward good things too. The sun was setting, painting the sky in colors I'd tried 100 times to capture on canvas and never quite managed. Some beauty was too big to contain. You just had to witness it and be grateful you were there to see it. He once said I married him for his money, I thought, watching the ocean turn gold. But in the end, it was my silence that cost him everything. Not revenge. Not cruelty. Just finally valuing myself enough to stop accepting less than I deserved. The wind picked up, carrying the smell of salt and possibility. Tomorrow, I'd paint again. Tomorrow, I'd walk on the beach and collect shells and maybe start a new series about beginnings instead of endings. Tomorrow was full of potential. But tonight, I just sat on my porch in my cottage by the sea and felt what peace felt like when you'd fought for it and won. It felt like coming home to yourself after years of being lost. It felt like silence that wasn't empty, but full. It felt like freedom. And it was beautiful. If this story touched you, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss our next story. We post powerful narratives about strength, justice, and finding yourself again every week. Drop a comment below about what you'd do in Clarissa's situation, or share a time when your silence was more powerful than words. Your story might inspire someone else who needs to hear it today. See you in the next one.